I'm the director of Voice Project. We're a startup company from Macquarie University. So my background is as an academic, and the research I was doing led to Voice Project. What we specialise in is employee surveys and customer surveys. And its relationship to cognitive science, I suppose, is that we're all about trying to extract the thoughts, the opinions, the values, the attitudes of employees and customers, and then use that data to improve the performance of organisations. I have quite a varied background. Coming straight out of high school, I did 1 year of economics, which I didn't enjoy, basically. So I didn't like the content, didn't really like the people that I was studying with, and at that point it was a reflection of what I really did enjoy, and that was psychology. So I did a switch to psychology and did undergrad psych. I did honours, and I'm a bit overeducated. Probably spent a bit too much time enjoying my education in that I did a Masters of Clinical Psychology, a PhD in Organisational Psychology, and an MBA. I wouldn't recommend that everyone takes that path, but that's what I've gone through to get to where I am now. So Voice Project came out of when I was at Macquarie University as an academic. So I was a senior lecturer in organisational psychology. I was the director of organisational psychology program. I taught human resource management, organisational behaviour. And my research area was looking at organisational culture and leadership, and we were doing surveys as part of that. And that led into commercial opportunities. So the clients that we were working with the surveys, we initially had some grant money, and we were doing surveys as part of that. Grant money ran out, but the clients we were working with said we want to keep doing it. So that started the commercial work. And then progressively, over time, while I was the academic, I was also building the Voice Project, the commercial side. And it just got bigger and bigger, and I had to make a choice about which direction was I going to go. Stay the academic route and keep the commercial side at a certain point certain size that I could manage, or switch over to Voice Project and continue to grow that. So at that point, I'd been with Macquarie University, I think it was like a dozen years or so on. So I kind of progressed my way down to part-time and then out of being a full-time academic, and now I'm full-time director of Voice Project. The future of cognitive science is tremendously vast. I'll keep my answer to just the type of work that we do. And I guess it's the level of expertise that I feel comfortable talking about rather than the broader area of cognitive science. But what we do, as I mentioned before, is the assessment of people's thoughts, beliefs, and then using that to inform decision-making in organisations. So the types of things that we engage in now, we rely very heavily upon online surveys, maybe paper surveys, maybe interviews to understand what people are thinking and their recommendations for changing workplace practices. But what we are hearing more about is how can that be done faster or in a more efficient, more real-time way. So there's interest from organisations in sort of constant surveying processes rather than doing, for example, an employee survey might be done once every year or 2 years, and it goes out to everyone and it's a big deal, lots of communications. To what degree is it possible to collect data with 1 or 2 questions and do it very frequently, either with samples within organisations? So collecting that information and trying to feed it back very quickly. There's certainly been a move in recent years to speed up the cycle time of the collection of the data and feeding back an action. So in the past, surveys may have taken 3 months or longer with their reporting process afterwards, and then there's a big gap between what people said and then trying to act upon it. That gap is becoming much shorter. People are wanting to act upon that information that comes back, people's beliefs, very quickly. There's also interest in the use of the more qualitative data or contextual data that exists. For example, in social media, to what degree can we collect the information that's in social media and make judgments about what people are thinking, their positivity or negativity towards a brand towards an employer? How valid is the collection of that data and the summarising of that data? There's also a big challenge in trying to use qualitative information. So for example, with our surveys, we'll have rating scale questions, agree, disagree type questions, but we'll have open-ended text questions. They're still really hard to analyse, and you'll get a lot of very rich, very useful data, but how do you efficiently process that? We still use what's really an old approach of having staff read through a sample of the comments and code them to come up with the themes. There's lots of software out there that does it, but ultimately that software is still pretty dumb. To what degree can that software, the intelligence of that software, be improved so that it's not just reporting frequencies of the words or phrases are being used, but can it get more intelligent in understanding what people are actually thinking at a broader sense and understand the context behind that qualitative information. So a lot of those are the challenges, I think, within the area that we work in for cognitive science. How do we process that information? How do we get the information out of people's heads quickly, in a way that can be reported on efficiently and managers can make decisions very quickly? We're predominantly organisational psychologists, so people have studied undergrad psych, they've done honours, most of them have done a master's, a couple of us have done PhDs. So on a technical level, that's the type of knowledge that we're looking for. Knowledge of psychology, knowledge of statistics is critical for what we do because analytics is very big. And indeed, I think it's only going to get bigger for people working in psychology, the importance of analytics. So that stats backgrounds for psychology is very important. Clearly a knowledge of organisations is important, but people can pick that up. It's probably not so critical that they get taught that at university. They'll progressively understand more and more about how organisations work as they work for an employer, work with clients. What's also critical for us is being able to work with clients. So the relationship management is a very important aspect. Perhaps less so when someone's early in their career at Voice Project because they're heavy in the analytics. They do a lot of analysis work, reporting work. They'll be trailing a more senior person at Voice Project when it comes to client meetings. But the expectation is with that shadowing a more senior person, they're picking up the relationship management skills. So being able to have the conversations, being able to problem solve with a client, being able to understand why we're doing a survey in the first place, what's the problem that they're trying to manage, that they're trying to resolve within the organisation. Then there's also just the very commercial aspect of sales. We're a consultancy, and the more senior you get, the more you're expected to get into the sales side. Now, we're not big on hard selling, we don't do cold calling, but nevertheless, there's still the reality of having to sell our work. We have to pay for the office, pay for employees. So as you get more senior, you're meant to pick up more of those sales skills. And that's probably an area that psychologists struggle with sometimes. Psychologists tend to be very caring, very service-oriented people, but they are on average not the raving extroverts that we associated with sales. Now, you don't need to be a raving extrovert, but you do need to have a level of confidence in yourself, knowledge of the product, knowledge of the service that you're providing to be able to manage those sales well. Advice for current students: look after your mum, study hard, but I have two daughters who are in high school at the moment, and I guess advice that I'm giving to them would apply to university students as well, which is pursue what you're really interested in. I mentioned before my career path, which hasn't been linear. If you follow what your interests are, you tend to land in a place that you're motivated, you're passionate about, you're more likely to put in the hours, the hard work, more likely to put in the mental energy to solving problems, you're more likely to be successful and more valuable and contribute more to society. So, and I think psychology gives a lot of avenues for pursuing your interests. There's a lot of potential for psychology, either people who come from a more research background, and they've got the scientific, statistical approach, and that's of value for a lot of organisations. And you see sort of research-based psychs ending up in places like Google, or psychologists who have the more practitioner orientation. And the value in psychology is it's seen in human resource management, which is an area that we deal with a lot on the employee survey side of things. There are a lot of psychologists within HR departments. So Psych provides this broad spectrum, a smorgasbord of areas that you can choose from. So I think we've got the luxury of being able to go with the areas that are of interest to us. And in many ways there aren't enough of us. We're having challenges in recruiting enough people to support the growth of the business. So there's definitely demand out there. I know that graduations from the organisational psychology program, for example, people are often got a job before they finish the program, or they'll get one very soon afterwards. There's lots of demands for psychology out there, so pursue what you're interested in. Psychology gives you that opportunity, and I think you'll be in demand when you get into the workplace.